So you're thinking about selling your house or property and you're just not sure what that entails. Well, this video is going to help walk you through the basic steps of what will happen when Cama Homes is working to sell your house. And of course, every situation is unique and dynamic, and they're all going to require tweaks and adjustments to meet your circumstances. So think of this as an overview or a guide as to what happens next. On a grand scale, you've got 4 phases to selling your house. And the 4 phases of selling your house are the pre-listing phase, the active marketing phase, controlling the sale phase, and the after closing phase. And each of these phases has multiple subsections and components with over 130 individual tasks and processes to manage. And then many of those tasks and processes have subtasks and components, which we'll talk through in future videos so you get a better idea and more thoughts in detail. If you're curious about a specific phase or section, skip ahead to the timestamps below or stick with me now for an overview of each phase. So phase 1 is pre-listing, right? The pre-listing phase starts, and this is really, really critically important with what your goals are. Before we get any conversations about marketing, any price conversations, any questions about timing, we have to get clear on your goals. Why are you selling? Is there an alternative we should be talking about to selling, right? Should you put a home equity line of credit on the property and use it as a rental, a short-term, a mid-term, or a long-term rental? Are there family members who can be caretakers? Is there another way to accomplish your goal without selling the asset, the house, the property? And the reason for that and why we need to get really crystal clear about what you're aiming for by selling is that once I sell your house, you're not buying it back, right? There's no take backs. And I wouldn't be a good advocate for you if I didn't spend at least a few minutes talking about alternatives before heading down a sales path with you, right? So once that's clear and you've decided to sell, and once your goals are clear, we're going to talk about a rough price range, and we'll talk about more on that in a little bit here. And then we can start working on a timeline and weigh the pros and cons of prep work to the property for you. So there's an age-old question, I believe it goes, I'll paraphrase, to prepare or not to prepare a house for sale? That is the question. And the answer is the more work, time, energy, and money you can put into getting a house ready to sell, the more money you're going to make. It's that simple. But there are diminishing returns, and oftentimes some of the least expensive items will make the biggest impact and difference on your final sales price. So paint and flooring can go a long way in making your house shine for the market. Part of that pre-marketing process is to identify which projects, if any, your house can benefit from, and what will get you the best return in terms of time and energy. And I sometimes get asked is if the pre-work is necessary or required to a property. And of course, the answer is no. I can sell any house. I've sold properties with holes in the floor, with water actively dripping through the ceilings, yet there's a price to pay for those sales to the sellers. And if the circumstances had been different and they would have been able to or could have done more work, they would have gotten a much higher final sales price. So here's a great example of preparing versus not preparing homes or houses for sale. Think back to 2021. The market was going crazy with low interest rates during COVID and even lower inventory levels. These were the days when we would all see it, properties selling over the weekend in 2 or 3 days for 20% over asking. And so you'd think that surely even challenging houses flew off the market then, right? That's reasonable, and there's some truth there. But if you look at the actual numbers, during 2021, in the entire Portland metro area, homes were flying off the shelf. I mean, we had over 25 offers on some of our listings. The average house in the Portland metro area sold for 102% of list price, 2% higher. In 2022, under similar circumstances, it was just under 102%. And how is that possible when we all saw houses selling for 10 to 15% overpriced regularly? And it's because even in that frenzy that existed, there were a lot of houses put on the market that just didn't prepare. They didn't showcase their best features. Instead, the agents involved and the sellers just depended on the rising tide to lift them up. And that worked a little bit. But how much money was left on the table by not preparing? Millions and millions of dollars that would have gone into seller pockets. And that's why the pre-listing walkthrough to identify that list of high impact projects is so important. So we'd come through, we'd have a walkthrough, and then once that walkthrough is done, we'd go back and we'd work together to create a list of projects ranked in importance for you to sign off on. And it's ultimately your choice on how many other projects to do or not do. And then from there, we'll create a calendar of events, working backwards from the day we want to go live in the market all the way through the catalog of events to share with you so you know what's happening, when it's happening, and who's responsible for it. Like this is everything from cleaners and landscaping to floor plans and painting, from installing staging to hanging the signage we create to when the photos are, right? While all this is happening behind the scenes, We're hard at work on the actual marketing for your property, right? High definition photos and videos, drone shots, aerial shots, video walkthroughs, listing flyers, seller letters, the interior signage, pre-marketing prep, evocative listing descriptions that call to your buyer, and more. It's a huge push to make sure that your property is shining and ready on day one when it hits the market, which takes us to the active marketing phase, right? We're at the end of the pre-listing phase, and we're in the active marketing phase. All the prep work is done, all the marketing has been created and installed, your property is gleaming, and what we hear more often than not at this point in phase two is, I would buy this house at this price. And that's music to our ears. That's exactly what we want to hear, because you have good taste. And if you like the house at the price it is, there will be others out there like that too. And so that's the last step before going active and officially being on the market, is to decide on an asking price. And contrary to many opinions, crafting the asking price is really more of an art than a science. And it's not the biggest task that an agent does for you. And that sounds counterintuitive, but I'll tell you that I, as your listing agent, and you as the seller, we don't set the sales price, right? We set an asking price to get buyers in the door, and then you get to say yes or no to their offers, right? We can all believe that your house is worth $1.5 million, but if a neighbor's property is larger, more updated, with a better view, and comes on the market at the same time for 1.4 million, nobody's buying your house at 1.5. So we have to price within the market of the moment. And we do that with comps, of course. And most importantly in my mind is what else your buyer has to choose from, what's available for them. And this will fluctuate from week to week, which is why we wait until the last moment to set the price. Of course, I aim to provide a rough range of pricing back in the pre-listing phase, so you at least know the zone you're likely going to be in. And at this point right now, we can see all the marketing and your hard work have come together, and we'll settle on that initial asking price that's, of course, up to you and that you have final say on. From there, we're off to the races, right? We've already been talking your property up to the brokers, we're live and on the market, and this is where we really kick all of that off. Decades of experience have taught us that marketing directly to other brokers so they can share your listing with all their buyers pays off amazingly well. And we do that through direct marketing, through email, through phone calls, through broker opens, through direct agent-to-agent communication, and more. Of course, we don't ignore the traditional methods of sale as well. If the market responds as we plan for it, then you're going to get showings from interested buyers who either found your listing from their brokers, who found it online, or from driving by. And that's why that first impression we want to craft with that prep list is so important. If your buyer takes the time to come view your property, they're interested. They want to buy your property, and they're ours to lose. So we'll talk about open houses for a second. On a case-by-case basis, we'll do open houses, and I'll do another video in the future explaining the reasons why you might not want to do an open house, along with a secret about open houses that most brokers just won't tell you. But if it gets interested buyers in and you're okay with it, we'll do them for you. And during this active marketing phase, we're soliciting feedback from brokers and buyers. We're responding to it. We're adjusting for changes within the market. We hear and we learn what words and phrases and imagery are scratching the itch for your buyer. And then we go back and make sure that that's highlighted in the marketing for other buyers. While there is a lot of, waiting in this period, it's what I like to call active waiting. We're responding to the market. We're interpreting what's happening. We're interpreting what it's telling us, and at times it can take a while for that market to develop. But to help bring that to you so you know what's happening, we're going to share updates on what's going on in the market as a whole. We're going to share updates with similar homes, with other neighborhoods, and what we're hearing and seeing from other brokers. That way you're always in the know about why we're getting the response or not getting the response that we're aiming for in the marketplace. I think that's really important, that you're always in the know. And this active marketing phase, the whole goal of this second phase is to get you an offer that you accept. And the offer process and negotiation, that's a whole separate video, but this is where in the process that would happen, and it takes us to the third phase, controlling the sale. So phase 3, controlling the sale. You've reviewed the offer, likely negotiated around some of the terms, and now you have accepted an offer and a buyer's under contract to buy your house. It's a huge weight and relief off of your shoulders. You know the hard work you put in to get this far is now paying off for you, but be really careful. Don't cash those checks in your mind yet. We've got to get across the finish line to closing first. And many sellers, they tell me this is the most, and they feel like this is the most nerve-wracking portion of the entire process. It's 100% understandable. You're waiting for the buyers to deposit their earnest money. You're waiting for the buyers to approve the title report, to formally apply for financing. You're waiting on inspections and follow-up contractors and vendors, and then you're waiting for appraisals and bank underwriters, and it can feel just this overwhelming weight. And a large part of my job in this phase is to help navigate those expectations and make sure you know what's going to happen next and where your decision points are so you can rest easy in between those. But it's not all passive. And that's why I don't call this phase managing the sale. Instead, it's controlling the sale. We know that behind the scenes, we can be incredibly proactive and set up your sale for success. We control the process as much as possible, pulling as many levers in your favor as possible through check-ins to ensure timelines are being met by the buyers, the lenders, the inspectors, etc., other vendors. We're communicating clearly to get in front of buyer concerns, making sure they aren't making up stories into their minds. In the same way, we're communicating clearly and being proactive with you. We're helping you read the tea leaves of what's happening behind the scenes in the transaction so that you're prepared for any potential issues that may arise, or reassure you that there are no issues that are likely to arise. And while there's no guarantee that a buyer will close the sale, we know, and I know, that having vetted the buyer, having vetted their agent, having vetted the lender while being proactive in our communication allows us to control the sale and give you the best odds of getting to closing. And so at this point, you're wrapping up phase 3, the controlling the sale, and you're signing the paperwork at escrow, the buyer's signing the paperwork at escrow, and you're depositing final funds. You're just a few days away from closing and having the deed being recorded with the county in the new buyer's name. And that takes us to the 4th and final phase of the selling process, after closing. So phase 4 of the selling process. After closing, congratulations, you've made it, right? The paperwork is signed, the deed is official, you've sold your house. So why is this after closing phase of a sale important to you? Your work is done, right? Well, there are still a lot of details to wrap up, not the least of which is making sure you've received your money. Right? The whole reason that you put in all this work and that we've gone through this process is to get you to this point. So let's at least make sure the money actually hits your account correctly, right? After that, of course, there are lots of little details that still often need cleaning up. You've got marketing and staging have to be removed, signs need to come down, your utilities switched over, insurance canceled, and more. If you've had a rent back, for example, so you can stay in the house after closing, we'll help navigate the move-out process and the security deposit return. And it's it's incredibly common that there will be questions and resources needed from you and the buyer, right? Buyers often, they want to know, now that they've lived there, what's that one random light switch we all have? What does that go to, right? We all have them. Or where's the sprinkler controller? They just have those random questions. And as a seller, there's a really good chance you're still going to get some mail delivered, or a random package will show up that got delivered to the old house. So as your guide and advocate, I don't run away when the sale is closed, right? I'm here to help navigate all of those questions and more as they come up. And having that resource is just, it's invaluable, and it's why it's important to not neglect the after closing phase of selling your house. But there you have it, right? The 4 phases of selling your house, done and complete for you. If you know anyone thinking of selling their house, share this video with them so they go into the process knowing just a little bit more about what's to come for them. If this was helpful, hit the subscribe button and like this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.